school board hold true to. I've tried to capture a couple of them. And the first is that the values of the community are reflective, the value of the schools are reflective of the community. You all have done a really nice job, I think, as a board of spiriting and fostering the work of the community forward. We also want to ensure that our students get as many days into the school year as possible to meet the code requirement of 180 days or 990 hours. Certainly is a value. Another is we want our teachers to get time to develop and plan for the coming school year. So another value is bringing teachers in for pre-service week, and then also offering teachers opportunities during the school year to do some professional development, because we know that professional development in a one shot in August or September isn't always sustaining, and it's always not the best way to do professional development either. What we know from research is that professional development is best offered through an embedded process. So the more we can embed some of those days into the school year so those teachers can get that professional development and then turn that around is a value that's quite important. Another value that it reflects is that families need breaks, kids need breaks, teachers need breaks, and so we do try to build those in. One other thing I didn't mention was I mentioned when we start at the first question about what goes into a calendar. I didn't also say when it ends. The school board has also suggested whenever possible to try to end school by June 15th, and that has been a working model for us the last couple of years. So starting after Labor Day currently and ending by June 15th. So then I put in here, some of the things we also need to kind of consider are what are the contract lengths for teachers, administrators, and the like. And I've mentioned already that most teachers are on a 200-day contract. 194 days of those are on site, and then they get 6 days of flex to do summer work, summer planning, and the like. Our administrators are on 11-month contracts and 12-month contracts, depending on their position. Many of our folks here at central office are on 11-month contracts, but there are a number of people who are on 10-month contracts who we do pay to come in for an 11th month on an hourly rate. And we have some 11-month that we pay for 12 months through an hourly rate as well. And all of that's important with respect to the calendar planning as part of our work. So then we get into this next question is how has a decision traditionally been made about the school calendar? And I want to take just a second to sort of talk about the process that we've had in place, because I think this coming year we'd like to mirror that process as best we can, but with a whole lot more communication and a lot more engagement with the community to provide some input. So in the fall each year, typically in October, an ad hoc committee is developed, and that team is made up of central office people, and then peak representatives, SEEK representatives, and then others that they identify from their sites, and administrative representatives, and other at their sites that they believe will be helpful in developing the calendar. And so the peak will appoint representatives, and that committee is traditionally led by the chief academic officer. They meet a couple of times, and that ad hoc committee reviews start dates and end dates. They look at holidays, they look at vacations, they look at teacher work days, they look at quarter balances, because we try to get as many of the quarters at 45 days each, as close as possible, just for balance. And then that ad hoc committee typically will develop then one, two, sometimes three draft calendars. And then once those draft calendars or draft schedules are done, that then is sent to all of Falls Church City Public Schools staff as a survey and for feedback. And we typically will ask them to, one, rank order those schedules that we've put out and then provide us feedback on those calendars. And then those feedback results are shared with us. Then I take those feedback from the staff. I schedule and share them with you. And then in the December timeline, you typically take a vote on what the calendar is going to be for the following year. And that's sort of how the calendar gets done. I think it's important to know that because, again, what I think we're trying to accomplish in the process that we're going to further outline tonight is to follow that timeline as best possible. And there's a reason for that that's important to us from an operational perspective. To be able to know when what the calendar is going to be as early as possible so that we can begin developing our schedules for the summer, for professional development, and for the coming year. So with that sort of as a backdrop of what do we do and how do we do it, and some of the context around the calendar, I have asked Tricia Minson to come and give a brief, she comes all the time, but I've actually asked her to engage a little differently tonight, and to give a bit of an explanation of what the new Virginia legislation says, and also share sort of what is the range of options that are available to you around the calendar. This has been a legislative agenda item for the surrounding jurisdictions for a long time, to be able to have the flexibility to start whenever the school board should want to start. And it sort of begins to get at that whole idea of, this is your school system, you all should make the decision about when we start school, not the state. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tricia to talk a little bit about the legislation.
Good evening. As you all know, the legislature has amended Virginia Code. The section is 22.1, 79.1. This year there was a Senate bill and a House bill that matched, that allowed local school boards to set school calendars so that the first day students are required to attend school is no earlier than 14 days before Labor Day. Previously, school start date couldn't be before Labor Day unless there was a waiver from the Board of Education, as Dr. Noonan had shared. So the new code language requires that if school boards do set the start date up to 14 days before Labor Day, or it could be 13 or 12 or 11 days before Labor Day, then those school divisions must also close the school division on the Friday immediately preceding Labor Day to give a 4-day weekend, so schools would be off that Friday and then the Monday of Labor Day. The range of possibilities for the 2020-2021 school year, based on where Labor Day falls, Labor Day for 2020 falls on Monday, September 7th. So 14 days prior to that would be the earliest start date. Let me back up. We can still start after Labor Day. With the new code provisions, now our school board could elect to have the school year start as early as Monday, August 24th, the 14 days before Labor Day. Could also start on Tuesday the 25th, Wednesday the 26th. There would need to be the day off on Friday, September 4th, 2020, and the Monday of Labor Day, September 7th, 2020. If school does start before Labor Day, the school year would likely end earlier. It wouldn't necessarily be 1 day earlier start, would be a 1 day earlier end, because we need to build the calendar out for work days, professional development, holidays, other things that the committee would need to look into. But previously, the school board had been limited and would have to start the Tuesday after Labor Day, or couldn't start no sooner than Labor Day. Now that is a possibility for this division based on the changes that came with, let's see, it was Senate Bill 1005 and House Bill 1652.
And then Mr. Bates had collected some data from the state, or the Commonwealth, to share with us about who's starting early as a percentage, because it might be nice just to know how many schools across the Commonwealth are starting early, and then in the northern region, our region 4, how many schools are starting early as well.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, we have, so currently, as it stands, we would be one of 4 jurisdictions in Region 4 that would not, 3?
Yeah, it's just
3. That would be Arlington, Alexandria, and us that are currently in the Region 4, which is where we sit, that would not have that pre-Labor Day start.
And then across the Commonwealth, it's slightly over 50% of the schools now are starting prior to Labor Day. So there's a lot of policy implications associated with that, with respect to, maybe not policy implications. There are implications for professional development and the like that we need to explore as part of this conversation as well, going forward, because the state does quite a bit of professional development. So anyway, just to give you a sense of the north of that region, there are 3, and it's we're still working with our neighbors to the east to determine what their thoughts are, because I know that will be one of the questions that you'll want to wrestle with, is what is Arlington and Alexandria doing, knowing that Fairfax and Loudoun and Prince William and everybody else in the northern region is already going early. and we'll be able to answer some of that.
Just to make sure it's 100% crystal clear, we're saying there are only 3 that are not right now, starting before Labor Day. All of the others in Region 4 are.
You are
And the 3
correct.
are Arlington, Alexandria, and us.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Oh, go ahead.
And do we know if if their school boards have this on their agenda as
Yeah.
well?
Well, those are the questions we'd like to get answered
Okay.
with authority. We have some working knowledge, but I would prefer to wait until the next work session on this topic to be able to give you that information with strong authority. But I do know that on both of their legislative agendas, it has been highlighted for the last several years. So I know it was something they've been fighting for. So just to kind of put that out there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Has VAS weighed in on this at all in any way?
VAS weighs in every year insofar is that it is part of its legislative agenda to seek flexibility on start dates. They have always, at least as long as I've been a superintendent, which now is 7 years, have always said schools should have the opportunity to do it, but they haven't really gotten into the why.
And have we reached out to the most recent of Fairfax County of how that first year with their transition to starting before Labor Day, have we talked with any of their folks as kind of just, as we start this discussion about us potentially transitioning?
I have, and now they've been they've been pre-Labor Day a couple of years now. And the first year of transition was a transition, like any other transition was. So there were some hiccups, but now it's sort of ingrained in the culture. And I think part of the reason that it was, well, I'll just say, I'll leave it at that. But they have made that move. One thing that is important to note too, and we can, again, we'll continue this conversation over the next several work sessions, is if whatever decision you make, whether you decide we're going to stay with the post-Labor Day start, or if you went with a pre-Labor Day start, you don't have to peg it to a certain date every single year either. You can go back each year and say, okay, this year, because of where Labor Day is, we're going to start on this date because it's so late. Or the following year, if it were earlier, you could say, okay, we're going to move the start date. So we would want to have conversations each year about what the start date was if you were to move to a pre-Labor Day start. I think it would be hard to say firmly we're going to start 14 days before Labor Day every single year, because you don't know where Labor Day is going to fall, and the impact of that could be significant if Labor Day was, for example, the 3rd of September. 14 days prior really moves you pretty far back into August. Just something to consider. All right, so let me kind of walk you through, now that I've sort of shared that information with you, let me walk you through a little bit further kind of this plan. We would like to remind everybody publicly and the board that all of our regular school board meetings have opportunities for public comment. And we want to encourage people to use that public comment period should they have any questions or concerns or thoughts regarding this calendar conversation that we're having. So the first opportunity for public comment around this is really October, that October regular meeting. Then at the October work session, what we would like to do is to begin sort of getting into the things that you're already thinking about, like what are the drivers, the potential drivers that are in play that we really need to get some information about. So we would like to, at the end of tonight, walk away with some ideas of what it is that you would like to have answered that would help you make a good decision about whether or not to start early or not. We've started to outguess some of them. So we've thought about, for example, instructional implications. We've thought about the testing calendar, snow day implications, Virginia High School League sports and competition schedules, staff working conditions, calendar implications with school board values by ending June 15th when able, summer professional development schedules, student work schedules, athletic and academic camps. Then we get into family vacations. And then there are some other